Rel. And I, along with Daniel Dabosky, Brian over there, who's setting up the live stream, which we're stalling slightly for, are the co-founders of Educators in VR. And we are just crossing into day 6, depending on where you are in the calendar, of this groundbreaking, record-breaking conference with, you've heard the numbers, over 170 speakers, over 150 different across 5 platforms, all in virtual reality across 6 days. Joseph, you need a little bit of help there. There you go. Okay. All right. So we are. I am so glad that you're here, and I want to remind everybody that this is the last evening that you need to get your pictures together for, this is a virtual conference. So there's nobody doing anything in the real world here, except hanging out here. So what we want is to get photographs of what it looks like for your setup, of how you're doing this in the real world. So take a picture of your setup, take a picture of yourself in your VR gear, 2D, whatever it is, with your headphones and all that, or headsets and things, and send it in, send it out.
Selfie.
There you go, Summit Selfie, hashtag Summit Selfie. And we're going to create this huge mural thing picture of what it looks like to attend a virtual conference, which is pretty freaking amazing. And then we also have Daniel. Tell them about tomorrow, besides all the awesome events we have.
Listen up, guys, listen up. I don't know if anybody was here for the panel Expanding Minds in the Metaverse with Alvin Mangrelin, Arthur Sikhoff, Matt Chacon, on all of those folk. Now, on the right here, you see Somnium Space, and they're doing something different than any of the other social VR spaces. They're building one instance. You can walk for 6 miles in any direction. People are building buildings that are going to stay there. So this is the closest you can get to the metaverse. And we've teamed up with them. They've only just put out a big public release, which we're super excited about. I think it was yesterday. And so Somnium Space and Educators in VR, we're making one joint event where they have a launch party and we have a rock out the summit party. It's going to be amazing. Now, I just want to add a couple of things. At the moment, Somnium Space is really only available for PC VR or Oculus Quest with Link. So that is a bit of an issue, and we're sorry about that. However, we want to get as many people in there as possible. So I think the most they've had is 70, 80 in there for now. We want to push that, and there's a record in VR, 460 people in the single instance. So.
Yep.
Something like that. I'm not sure we're going to make that, but let's try. Let's just try. Who knows? We've broken other records. Let's go for that. One other thing I do want to say is what Atwa is doing with his vision is really pushing all kinds of boundaries. And it's so fresh off the press that we're just fingers crossed. We're sure it's going to work, but there may be some issues. So if you have issues, either, I don't know, making it work or so, apologies, that's just kind of where we're at with this industry. So bear with us. We hope it works really smoothly, because when you do get in, it is beautiful. So try your best to get it loaded up and ready and tested so that you have the best chances of joining us. Go on.
And I just now got a message from part of the team that's told me that they're right now they're getting ready to issue another patch to make sure it's solid. So I mean that's pretty darn responsive. I just absolutely love that they're working
Those guys
so hard
are working
for us.
flat out to make this a really cool event. So please join us, and don't only join us. Please get on social media. We're putting some posts out, and help us share this far and wide beyond our little echo chamber here. Try and share it far and wide. The whole VR community. We will get a lot of people in there. That's my bit on the Rock Out the Summit tomorrow.
All right. So, and then we are going to be doing a social event back here in AltspaceVR. Afterwards, we're getting ready to schedule that. So we've just decided to throw that in afterwards, that for those, because we just felt bad about the people that are in the mobile devices.
Exactly.
That they just can't, it's just they can't get in it. That's all you have. So we're going to throw an after party here. We'll be putting that on the schedule very, very soon. But
that's going to be 1 p.m. The after party will be here about 1 p.m. Pacific Standard Time.
No time.
No?
Don't be telling times, because we don't have it set yet.
I take it back. My apologies.
We're working on the time part, but it'll be after the other party. Yeah, so no commitments yet. So we'll have that on the calendar. And I just want to take a second while everybody's still coming in here for just a second. I want to thank Daniel for all your amazing work. For Donna, who's up there, who's been busting without sleep for like batches of 30 and 40 hours. I don't know how you do it, my friend. And
Look
to
after yourself,
Karen,
Donna.
oh my gosh, Karen and Diamond and Michael Zhang. I mean, I can go on with the list, but I just want to take a moment for you to understand that it took a village to do this. And Tom, you're part of that village. Just want to take that second that there are almost, I think 300, I can't remember, almost 300 people that are involved to make this happen for you. All free.
That's amazing.
All open to the public, whoever get their virtual butts in here. Plus we had people who donated their time at last minute because we had trouble with the live stream with video to come in, and we have crowdsourced open, video and stuff that we're putting together. We're going to be pushing it out. Thank you for your time and effort on doing that. This is grassroots and what makes it works. And I just want to say we also need your financial help. We have a GoFundMe set up that is on educatorsinvr.com. Look for the GoFundMe button, and please, the smallest amount helps us not only keep doing this, but it also helps us with our scholarship programs, our outreach programs, and other things that we're doing, spreading not only the word and the training and opportunities, but also doing great research. And Tom's going to be talking about some of the amazing research potential that is out here as well. So thank you, everybody, for all your help and all your support.
Thank you.
And now,
all right.
Professor Furness. Furness. There you go. I can't even talk. My lips are gone. It's all yours.
Is it only Wednesday you were here, Tom? It feels like a month ago.
No, it was Monday. It was Monday.
It was Monday.
Right? No, it's Monday.
And you got a fair way through your presentation on the Monday, but then I think towards the end something happened. What happened? Yes. You tell us.
Okay, what happened? All right. As it turns out, our internet dropped out.
Yeah.
From the place where I was doing work. My internet service provider, just went blank, and it took me 10 minutes to get back on the air again. And by then, everyone had left. So,
I know.
I can understand why, but we came back and the room was empty, and so that's okay.
I love it.
All right, here we go again.
So we're going to do
Laurel,
this again.
who's doing slides?
All right, I am, and everybody give up some hands, give up some hearts, give up some joy to the amazing Tom Furness. We're going to reboot him so he gets a chance to do this again. All right, it's all there. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. And thanks all you guys for coming. And you're gluttons for punishment, as I mentioned before, to have to endure me for a little more. But I did want to get through the rest of my presentation because I didn't really talk about, I thought, the interesting stuff. But nevertheless, let's see what happens. So let me begin my remarks by saying, I feel like I'm in Woodstock. Woodstock, I don't know if you guys know what Woodstock is, but Woodstock was a happening. It was a place where during the Vietnam War period, all of the hippies sort of gathered and had several days of celebration. And it was sort of this pin-up passion that was there that came forth. And it became what we call a happening. Nobody anticipated what would happen. And I think that's what we're seeing here. It's a happening. It is. It's not only is it a miracle. It's. I mean, we knew the technology was there, but it was the gathering that's made it so important. And all of the minds and hearts that have come here into this place, where we can compare notes and get to know each other and talk about the things we love. So this is amazing experience, and it's sort of it's another one of those epiphanies in my life of what can be done. So. Let's start off with a little story. Next slide. So there we go. So several years ago, my wife and I, we have two daughters, and we had reached a time in our lives where it's time for our daughters to leave home and go to university. Now, we didn't really understand what that meant at the time. We thought that, wow, this is going to be really a special time for us. And so, sure enough, one daughter went off to school 2,000 miles away, and then the other daughter went off to the same school 2,000 miles away. And now it was like nobody told us what would happen with the empty nest. Now we sort of looking at each other and saying, and it was lonely. I mean, nobody came to see us anymore. The telephone didn't call anymore. We weren't rushing around to help our daughters with their activities, and it's sort of like someone had died. But my wife, being the intelligent and wonderful person she is, said, well, why don't we have all the spare time? Why don't we do something sort of fun and educational? And I said, okay, let's try something. So she was looking around in the catalog of the local high school had these quote, adult education classes. So we thought, hey, that might be a good idea. And so she was looking through here, and one of the ones that were available, and she said, why don't we go do this sketching course? I said, really? I mean, I don't have any talent. I'm an engineer. I can draw a straight line with a straight edge, but that's just about it. And she said, well, it's worth a try. Let's go do this. So we went off to the art supply store, and we bought our pencils and our sketch pads and so forth, and signed up for this course and showed up the first night. Now, what happened was this was one of my epiphanies. What happened was, don't go to that slide yet. What happened was that this teacher stood in front of the class. He said, okay, I want you to know that you already know how to sketch. This capability is within you, and what we're going to do is use this technique pioneered by Betty Edwards, who wrote the book Drawing from the Right Side of the Brain. And what we're going to do is switch off your left brain and switch on your right brain, and you will be able to take that latent talent and sketch. Now, I was saying, sure, this is one of those California things. Before long, we're going to be sitting in a full lotus position, listening to sitar music while these pictures ooze out of our fingertips, But, we were there, we had our sketch pads and things like that, and so we began this journey. She said, okay, the first thing I want you to do is get out your sketch pads, and I want you to sketch a picture of me. Now, you have to understand, I hadn't done anything like this since I was probably 10 years old, because I knew I didn't have any talent. So I just said I did the best I could. Now, this next slide is that first sketch I made in that class. A long time. And so anyhow, after that first night, we started doing these crazy exercises. Things like we would sketch a wadded up piece of paper, or we would sketch something with our eyes closed, or we would, one of the nights, this teacher gave me a photograph. She said, okay, Tom, what I want you to do is take this photograph and sketch a picture of me, or sketch a picture of the photograph. And so I did. I sketched the photograph, and sure enough, what happened was my photograph was pretty bad. I could have predicted that. It was pretty bad. And she said, now, Tom, what I want you to do is take that same photograph and now turn it upside down and sketch it. So I sketched it upside down, the best I could, sketched it, and then I turned my sketch right side up. And it was pretty good. Wow, what is going on here? And then we went through these other exercises, and I didn't do any practice after class. I mean, we'd go to class one day a week for a couple hours, and that was it. But then a few weeks later, I guess it's about 6 weeks later, this teacher in one of the classes said, okay, Tom, here's a photograph I want you to sketch. Or this time, I want you to sketch it right side up to begin with. So this next slide is that photograph of a photograph I sketched. Now, if you had told me that I could do that first class, my response would be, no way. I don't have the talent to do that. I don't have the skill set to do that. But that teacher was correct that first class. Next slide. What she did was unlock something. In this next slide, you'll see, this transformation that took place. And the next slide. There we go. Just comparing the two. This is 6 weeks different. And so that teacher was correct. I did have that talent all along. What I didn't know how to do was to see. And I believe that all of us have these incredible capabilities that are locked up inside of us because we don't have the tools to let them out. And this is one of the areas where virtual reality is going to make a huge difference. Next slide. Well, during this same time, I was working for the Department of Defense, for the U.S. Air Force. My job was developing cockpits for fighter airplanes. And I started doing this in 1996. And my job was to figure out how to couple a human, one human, to an incredible machine that had 50 computers on board, had 35 displays, 70 displays, 350 switches, 11 switches on the control stick, 9 switches on the throttle, and you were flying past twice the speed of sound and pulling G's at the boundaries of consciousness. So it was a busy workplace for the pilot. And it was really difficult using that tool to do the kinds of things that they had to do to perform a mission. For example, in order to aim systems on the airplane, you had to aim the whole airplane. Furthermore, there's so much stuff crammed in the cockpit, there wasn't any space to put in displays that let you see at night, on television, low-level TV. Furthermore, the sheer complexity of all those different displays, you felt like your brains were oozing out of your fingertips because it was so complex. So I started working on this. I was trying to come up with better ways to get bandwidth to and from the brain. So I started working on these new devices. Next slide. And some of you have seen these slides before, but in 1967, I started working on the first helmet-mounted display. This was a virtual display. It projected this virtual image at sub-10 to 30-degree angle. And it meant that it didn't take up any cockpit space. You had this big picture. You never get in the cockpit. And oh, by the way, it moved as you moved your head around. And the way we did at that time, you could see the outside world with one eye. You could see this display picture with the other eye. We thought that was the way to go at the time. And then a little bit later, in 1969, worked on this way to track the head position. So we determined where the head position is relative to the cockpit using an infrared triangulation scheme on the helmet. And then we said, wow, let's put these two together. And you see in 1971, we have the head tracking system using infrared tracking and also a visor projected virtual display. So you could see through the display if you wanted to in daylight, or it was a variable transmission capability. You could actually see at night. You could have it appear as a full virtual reality or augmented reality. And this was in 1971. Now, through a number of years, we spent a lot of taxpayers' money, lots of different graphics processors, image generators, imaging devices, tracking electronics. We end up in the early 80s looking at, well, how can we build a cockpit that you wear? The so-called super cockpit. And a super cockpit would basically present a circumambience of visual information where we're fusing information from all those systems that we have in the aircraft into one big picture, and also a God's eye view in our lap, and a way for us to basically interact with the cockpit just by looking at things and speaking. We look at a switch panel, we say something, or we point at it with our finger and we get tactile feedback that we did this. And this is what we call a super cockpit. And in order to simulate some of those things, you see in 1981, we built this Darth Vader helmet. And this was hooked to 8 VAX computers and 2 Evans Sullivan picture systems that let us draw the 2 eyes. It was in 3D. And then what you would get, of course, is a fusion of the information we got from all those other cockpit displays that you saw before into this green picture. And so with that, we could do all of these things in terms of getting bandwidth to the brain. Instantaneously, how it could determine what was going on. It was almost like it was a mimetic display. It's a picture. And a picture's worth 1,000 words. 2 pictures are worth 2,000 words. No picture is 100,000 words. And so this way we were getting higher bandwidth of the brain than we ever got before, from having to go from those highly coded displays to what we see today. Next slide. So in pretty much all my career, what I've been doing is been tapping virtuality. Because virtuality has always been there, but we just haven't taken advantage of it. This morning, when you stood in front of the mirror to look at yourself, to put on your makeup, or to shave, and for Daniel, where's Daniel? Both? Yeah, Daniel. Yeah. So he's beautiful for us. You can tell that's clean-shaven face and everything, and yeah. So this, what you saw is a virtual image of yourself. Daniel, when he stood in front of that mirror, saw himself. That's not really him. That doesn't look like him, actually. This looks like him, right, Daniel? So anyhow, this is a virtual image. So how do we tap this? How do we tap virtual visual images, virtual acoustic images, virtual tactile images, and so forth? Next slide. So from this experience and working for the Department of Defense, I decided to beat my sword into a plowshare and become an academic, become a professor, to take all that, what I learned from the taxpayers' investment in my education, and try to do some good with it. And there were some things that happened to make that, where I made that transition, that I talked about last time. But what it ended up being was exposure to the media, because I was asked to do basically a press release and a press conference about the work I was doing on this super cockpit on network television. So program came out on television, and I started getting phone calls from people who wanted to know if they could use the technology. A mother had a child with cerebral palsy. A surgeon wanted to do a minimally invasive surgical procedure, or wanted to have the CT scan projected inside the patient. Firefighting companies, anesthesiologists were calling me and saying, "Can you use that technology to do this?" And I realized that, well, yeah, you could. As a matter of fact, it'd be easy to do compared to what I've been trying to do. So I left the Department of Defense, Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, and moved to Seattle. Wow, what a transition that was. And then started the HIT Lab, the Human Interface Technology Lab at the University of Washington, with the mandate of what we're going to do is take this technology and get it out to the people, and in applications across the spectrum. So in 1989, we began working on this and grew from one person, me, to 120, raised about $30 million of funding, and spun off 27 companies. 2 of them are traded on NASDAQ at a market cap of about $12 billion now. This is done with my students. And we did that because we had a mandate. Our report card was going to be based upon transitioning technology and getting it out in the world. We're going to make a difference. And we did this by using this multidisciplinary, transdisciplinary approach, where I had students from all over the university, not just in engineering. Well, we had it from all engineering. We had it from electrical, mechanical, industrial, bio, computer science and engineering, civil engineering, material science and engineering, all of these, but we also had art and drama and music. Yeah, you had a PhD student in drama. We had oceans and fisheries. We had occupational health and therapy. We had the medical school, dental school, nursing school, geography, psychology, and the College of Education. So these students would then come in to my lab and live there. And I would organize them into clusters. I had 50 companies that pledged $50,000 a year in money or in technology or in kind. And with that money, I started seeding projects. And I'd take a group of students. For example, I had one group that was a psychology major. These are grad students mainly. Psychology major, a double E, oceans and fisheries, and a PhD in drama, PhD student in drama. You turn them loose and give them a problem to solve. And it was amazing what happened. Because the juices started flowing, they had different perspectives of looking at the problem, and they came up with these miracles. We were getting 3 or 4 patents a week from these kids. And they wouldn't leave. I couldn't get them to go home. I said, "Hey, you guys got to get a life, outside of my HIT lab." And then eventually we spun off another HIT lab in New Zealand and another one in Australia. And so this became the boilerplate or the birthplace for a lot of the technology you see today. Up here you see in 1994, one of my early patents was for this personal eyewear display. This is where you put this headset on, look like ski goggles, and you get a 1 meter screen about 3 meters away, a virtual image. And so you could plug into a television receiver on your waist and walk around and watch Oprah if you wanted to, while sitting on Waikiki Beach, or watch the NFL playoffs or something like that. But as it turns out, with using a liquid crystal source, we really ran out of pixels really fast. And I decided the best way to solve this problem is just to write the image directly on the retina of the eye. And you see in 1996, this is an optical bench of the virtual retinal display. This is where we're scanning the image directly on the retina of the eye with miniature lasers. High resolution, super wide field of view, super saturated color, no problem with luminance, and it runs at energy levels that lower than what you do go outside, so you aren't going to burn the retina. This was unprecedented. It was patented in 1995. The patent has expired, and we still don't have those systems out there today, but it's revolutionary. It will put all of the display technologies you see today in the dust, because there's no other way that we can get that kind of performance with traditional liquid crystal OLED displays. So in 1999, one of my students, a PhD in electrical engineering, shows up and from New Zealand, Mark Billinghurst, and he starts working on with Hiro Kato from Japan, the first video-based augmented reality. And we actually spun off the first company in augmented reality called AR2Works. And that began in the early 2000s. And from that, we could build a magic book technology. And the magic book technology allowed us to open up a book. We could look at a page, and then three-dimensional world would pop out of the book. And then you could go inside that world and then explore around, like Cinderella's castle. You go in there and you move around in this castle, and then you decide, okay, I'm going to move on, and you click the switch and you're out of the castle. So you're looking at the castle, you go inside the castle, you come back out. And of course, you turn the page of a book, and there's another world for you to go into. Now, this could be, of course, a storybook, but this also could be a math textbook. This would also be an engineering textbook. This could be a history lesson. All of these things in terms of merging books with virtual things that can come from the computer. Wow, this was unprecedented. So that was our magic book technology with it. Next slide, please. So we were inventing these technologies, acoustic, tracking, displays, all of this kind of thing, but it's no better than what you could do to put them to work. And again, we were looking at applications across the spectrum in medicine and education and training, visualization, data analysis, just a number of things. And so, but our most fun projects were with schools. And in 1993, we actually started a project with the Pacific Science Center, where we had young ones who were 9 years old to 14 years old start building their own virtual worlds. This had never been done before. They started doing this using pretty clunky stuff. And at the Pacific Science Center, they had these machines that create the world using 3D Studio or something like that, I believe. And then they bring them up to my lab. We put them into our graphics supercomputer, our Silicon Graphics machine. They would render them. They'd spend a day in their world. So we didn't think they'd do it. They knew how to do it. We were wrong. About 20 minutes, that was all it took, and they started working on worlds. And oh, by the way, we had to give them a polygon allowance. Each of them had a polygon allowance. There may be, 10 kids to a group. They only have so many polygons each of them could create because we couldn't render them but so fast. So that leveled the playing field. Each of the kids got a chance to do as much as the other kids in terms of the creation. So that led to other projects. Museum of Flight, Boeing Field, we built a starship where students will actually fly a starship into the heavens looking for planets that would support life and sending out virtual probes and things like that. And then we built this VRRV, the Virtual Reality Roving Vehicle, where we took the technology from our lab out into the schools. Throughout Washington State and the state of Nebraska, we had about 4,000 kids that have a chance to go into virtual worlds. They'd never seen this before. And then we had about 350 of those kids who built their own virtual worlds. And this you see is in around 1996. Now, I showed you that personal eyewear display before. Again, one of the things that a miracle that happens is you start a journey and you trip over things. And oftentimes what you trip over becomes more interesting than what you originally decided to do to begin with. So in this case, we found out that when we built that personal eyewear display, that dentists started buying them. And we didn't know why. And we went to see the dentist and we found out they were giving them to their patients. The patients were putting these on, they were actually watching a movie, and in the process, the dentist got on with the dentist work. And the dentist said, "This is wonderful, the patients don't complain anymore, and we have a new problem though, is now we can't get the patients to leave." So that was the downside they felt. But more remarkable than that was what happened to the kids. The kids would play Nintendo in this, and they then loved going to the dentist. And they kept asking their parents, when can we go back to the dentist to put on those glasses and be able to play Nintendo? So we've done a lot of work in education and medicine. The whole work in pain came from this tripping over some of these things. Because after that, we went to the burn clinics and we started going to the military. And now VR is being used as a pain analgesic throughout the world and in hospitals, and also for PTSD and for therapy dealing with phobias and so forth. And again, it happened by accident because we started a journey and tripped over something. And that's what's so exciting about being on the frontier. But you have to be aware and present of what's going on. So, next slide. So after all this time, this 54 years I've been working on this, what are the lessons? Well, pretty much I think most of the speakers that I've heard at least have said the same thing I'm saying. That indeed, there's no question about VR working. It works. All of the studies we've done, all the money we spent on NSF money and others, we've proven that it works. The retention is enormous. We've had students that make C's and D's in chemistry to catch up with the smart students, so-called smart students. And then when they're tested a year later, they're better than the smart students. It's just like those first drawings I showed you. The potential was inside of them, is inside of them all the time. We just need a way to get it out, to unlock it, to unlock that intelligence. Now, at the same time, we found over the years that it is really difficult to get VR into schools. A lot of you have talked about that. It's expensive. Nobody really completely understands it yet. And the decision-making process is draconian in that every school district has their own decision-making process. So in the Washington area, you know, there are 50 or more school districts in the Seattle area. And so you have to go to each one of those individually. And so we don't have a very good top-down system for introducing technology into schools. Furthermore, the ones that do get into it are usually people that are pioneers. They are people that are enlightened and want to try out some things. So how do we solve that problem? I have some ideas about that later. So we know that VR can be one of the technologies of our age. It is a tool. It is a tool of our age that we can use to lift mankind just as a wheel did, just as fire did, just as splitting the atom did. But just like splitting the atom, VR can be dangerous. Now I changed this slide from the first time I showed it. I said VR is dangerous, but it can be dangerous. And we have to be careful about how we're using it. And that's why I use the title Playing with Fire. Next slide. Because we're doing some things that are really different than we've ever done before. As we're pushing our faces through this screen into a computer-generated world, what that means is we're taking all of our senses in there, into this place. And those senses have different rules we have to follow. We have to understand how the eyes work, how the ears work, how the hands work, how tactile works. And as it turns out, neophytes who are just getting started don't know those things. When we spent, 30, 40, now 50 years exploring that, because we can really hurt people with VR if we don't understand the way these systems work, and especially the visual system, because it is really intricate. And there are several things involved with the visual system we have to be aware of, and that is there's a vestibular system that helps stabilize the eyes. There is an accommodation response which helps focus the eyes, and there's the vergence, or the binocular vision, that gives us a 3D. And all of these work in conjunction with each other. And if we don't get that right, that balance right, we can really hurt people. Now, Alvin Graylin made a comment that I agree with. He said, well, actually, VR is better than looking at screens all day long. In a way it is, because you can now look at optical infinity, look out into the distance, and you're not looking at something up close, like with a smartphone. That is good. But if you look at that all day long, it's going to be no better than these other things. So what we really need is to be able to modulate the accommodation response along with the vergence cues and things like that give us 3D. If we don't get that right, then we're going to hurt people and have hurt people. So that's one of the reasons why we're playing with fire. We have to understand these things. The other reason is that fire, as you see in this slide, is wonderful. It can warm us, give us light. It can help us cook our food. It can power our trains, all of this. But it also can burn us, and destroy our homes, and destroy our forests, just like the atom. The atom can blow us apart from the outside in. VR can blow us apart from the inside out. And that all has to do with the content. Because when you're in VR, it's different than looking at a screen. If you're in VR and you're blowing the brains out of another person in VR, and the blood and guts are spread all over the place, it's different because you've created a place. And you never forget places. The retention, the spatial memory that's unlocked is there. So you'll never forget blowing out somebody's brains. And one of two things happen. You either have nightmares or you get numb. And I believe that we have to be careful about that. That we want to make sure that when we're creating this content, that it is good content. It's good for the soul and good for the mind, rather than degrading. So, let's go to the next slide. This brings me to the point where we ask the question, okay, there's a good side and a bad side. Well, is there potential? I think everyone could say absolutely. Because you see this kid, he can't wait to get home to play Grand Theft Auto. He's bored to tears, sitting at a desk, having to do these things that you do in the classroom. Now, this is not, I realize I'm stereotyping here. That's not always the case. But what really turns him on is getting home and playing with his computer. That's what causes his juices to flow. That's how he spins his cycles. And he's not excited about what's going on in this classroom. So what do we do about that? Next slide. Well, I want to propose a manifesto. This is coming from me and others that I've talked to, and it's certainly not perfect. And this is where we'd like some feedback from you. We're trying to generate this manifesto for education in the virtual world society. So let's look at these items in the manifesto. Number one, we are playing with fire. And we need to realize that. It's not just like buying a gadget off the shelf and it's just easy to work. We've got to understand there's a big deal with interpupillary distance. There's a big deal with putting weight on the head. There's a big deal with what content we have, all of those things. We are playing with fire. We need to understand that and appreciate it and respect it, just like we respect fire. Next slide. So that means that we want to do no harm. Above all, we want to do no harm. If we educate the kids, but we scramble their brains, then what good is that going to be in the long run? And doing harm has to do with this next manifesto, number 3. And that is, we need to shun violence in any form. And that means where people are hurting other people virtually, or bullying other people, or whatever, or abusing their space. And I've seen a lot of that in VR, where people go in there and they do things which they would never do, or we hope they never do in the real world. Number 4. Next slide. Ah, yes. Our children are our treasures. Any nation in the world, their treasure, greatest treasure, are their children. And the children are going to be the future. And we have a responsibility as adults to treasure them. And especially treasure their imaginations. And imagine their imagination and their creativity and their curiosity. We can't destroy that. And that's what can happen if we put them in a room, sitting at a desk, and sit there all day long, expecting that that's the way they learn. Let me tell you a little story. Next slide. I was invited a few years ago to give a keynote address at SIGGRAPH in Africa. It's called AFRIGRAPH. It was in South Africa, in a little town called Grahamstown, on the East Cape of South Africa. And this was an amazing little town. Well, it's not little, about 100,000, a little over 100,000 people. But again, what you had was apartheid was still present, at least in where you lived in town. There was sort of the rich side of town and there was the poor side of town. And what the people there at the university did is said, we want to take you for a drive around. And so we drove around the so-called rich part of town. And then where a lot of the homes were in compounds with razor wire, barbed wire fences around them. Then we went over to the other side of town. And what we saw, one of the first things I noticed was a cell phone tower. I said, what is that doing there? They said, oh yeah, everybody has cell phone, but they don't have electricity. And what they have to do is give their cell phones to the kids to take to school where they can charge them. And then people are using cell phone. I'm saying something's wrong with this picture, but they're living in shanties. Then I went to this school. They took me to this little, this elementary school, and showed me what's happening there. The university had built, Rhodes University had built, you see here in the picture, this kiosk. It's sort of a little building, a little brick building. And in this brick building, I think it had 12 windows around the brick building. And in each of those windows, they put a PC. So kids could reach through, and actually there was a way for them to use a mouse and to actually a keyboard, and they could interact with this computer. Only they didn't get any instruction. The school just put it there, turned them on, and then left. What happened at recess, these students come out, go up from their soccer playing to come over and look in these windows. They started playing. Lo and behold, they figured out how to get on all with no instruction. And then, and one of the things he told me that happened, that they figured out that all of those on the division multiplex system, everyone, if you kids around neat at the same time, you could make sound around the building because of the multiplex on their own. This is amazing. There's those kids. They are just as brilliant as any other kids in the world. They just and one of the things we're trying to deal with to be able to treasure all the children and figure out a way to. I'll go to the next. In addition to treasure children, the treasure.
Tom, we're having
Yeah.
some audio issues with you breaking up. I really hate asking this, but if you could re-enter the space, it may clear up. So just go that big
Oh,
circle with a
dear.
triangle, go to settings. I hope we're not
Go
going to
to-
blow up your Wi-Fi again.
Okay,
So big circle
all right,
menu, go
so
to
I could
settings.
Go to,
Big
what's the-
settings, general, re-enter.
okay.
And then we'll wait patiently, right? We're the most patient people when it comes to this re-entering business, aren't we? And for you, we will wait. We waited already a
Now?
few days. We will wait again. So hit re-enter off of the general tab under settings, general, re-enter. And it should clear up your audio.
Okay.
We're used to it.
You're used to. Okay.
I hate it. It's the cache and the device gets overloaded. There he goes. All right. Daniel, you want to remind him about tomorrow, please?
Indeed. While we're waiting for Tom, reminder about the Somnium Space launch and Rock Out the Party joint event we're trying to put on. Well, we're going to put it on, and we hope as many of you as possible will come and join us. Get your PCs ready. It's PCVR or Oculus Quest with the Quest link. And let me know, Laurel, when Tom comes back. We're trying to get as many people as possible in Somnium Space, which is the poster over there. Go to www.somniumspace.com. Download the launcher. Make sure it's running smooth, tested, and everything. It's going to be a great event. And can I just say, what an absolute honor to have Tom here, and I'm sure he'll be portaling back again any minute now. I could listen to him all night, and I think it's 3 a.m. in the morning for me here in the UK, but I'm not going anywhere. All right, let's see. Let's do a Mexican wave. Let's try this. I'm going to start over here where my hand is. Can I get some emojis going here?
Daniel,
All right,
for those that
yes.
don't have hands, that's prejudice. But we can do it with emojis. All right, do it with emojis.
Yeah, I mean emojis.
Okay,
yeah.
emojis. All right.
All right,
Sorry.
emojis over here, moving over. Emojis. I love it. All right, and we go back from here. Ready? Starting over here. Emojis. This is so cool.
I love it.
Fantastic. Fantastic. All right,
So-
all right, front row. Wait, no, can we do front row? Front row emojis, only in the front. Kent in the front here. All right, and watch in the back. You ready? Front row and next row. One row back. One row back. Emojis. Right at the back, emojis. On the
This
back of the
is a-
balcony, emojis.
Woo! Back in the back, back of the room, back of the buzz.
Love
Here we
it.
are. All right.
Is he here?
Not
Is he?
yet. No,
Okay.
he must have
All
really
right.
had to turn everything completely off and back on, but we're going to wait for him because we're patient.
Of course we are. Of course we are.
Yay! We are patient.
All right. Well,
And because Daniel, we are,
Yes,
this is such an amazing experience here. I
Yeah.
mean,
yeah.
that we're almost done with 6 days of this. So I'd like
Yeah.
to know how many events people have been at. So how about some
Okay.
emojis for
Oh,
numbers
yeah,
of events?
all right. Has anybody been to, give me some emojis if you've seen, I don't know, 2 events. 2 and no more. 2 and no more. Or yeah, no, okay, 2 or more. 2 or more. Okay, 2 or more. That's good. All right. Good. All right. Let's hear. Anybody here seen 5 or more events? 5 or more. Anyone? That's a lot of people, Laurel. Jesus, that's a lot of people. Okay. All right. Stretch it now. Anybody seen 10 events?
Wow.
Anybody seen? Oh my word.
Holy
10
cow.
Okay, 15. Anybody think they've seen 15 events? That's still a lot of people. Wow.
Should we go for 20?
Yeah, is anybody stuck and needs help getting out of their headset? Yeah.
Who fell
All right, should we
asleep
go
in
for
it?
20?
Yeah,
Who
20.
thinks they got 20? Who thinks they got 20? Anybody? Oh, Carlos here is dedicated. He's seen 20. Laurel's seen 20. I must have seen more than that. That is remarkable, isn't it, guys? Okay, here's another question. Who's been to only AltSpace? Anybody been? Give me some emojis if you've only stayed within AltSpace, because we tried really hard to work with other platforms. Okay, that's good, because probably 80% of the events, to be fair, were in AltSpace. All right, let's see who's been to the Engage platform. Anybody here been to Engage? That's a lot of people. That's excellent. I wish Chris Matson could see this in the immersive VR education. That's cool. That's great. Who made it to a Mozilla Hubs event? Anybody? Oh yes, we have him back. Just let me finish this, Tom. This is brilliant. We're going through who's been where. Who's been to Mozilla Hubs? Give me some love if you've been to Mozilla Hubs. I love WebXR. Okay. And did anybody make it? Where else have we been? Oh, who made it to Rumi? I love Rumi. I've one at the back there, a couple here. Rumi, excellent. All right. Just before we go, Tom. Well, I'll leave it there. It's all yours, Tom. Come on, take over. Back to you.
All right, Tom, we need you back on megaphone and on air.
Yeah. Bottom right, host panel,
Those tools,
megaphone, and on air.
Okay, how about now?
Thank you. Yeah. Yeah, it's good.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, can hear you.
Yeah.
All good. Everybody hear him clearly?
Yeah. Okay,
All right,
good.
here we go.
Okay, guys,
Excellent.
well, let me tell you what happened. So here I am in Seattle, in my home in Seattle, and I'm using a Oculus Quest, and it got dark. So I was sitting here in the sunshine, and then it got dark, and the tracking stopped. So that was I had to redo everything. But anyhow, I'm back. So let's get ahead going here because I'm running out of time. So treasuring the teachers. The teachers, I mean, all of us have had teachers that have made a difference in our lives, right? And the main reason that's made a difference in our life is they believed in us, they cared about us. We knew that. We knew that they loved us and that they loved what they were doing, even though they may be hard on us. We knew that it came from something where they saw something in us and they wanted to help us achieve whatever we could achieve. And so the teachers are important, and it's important for the teachers to embrace this technology as much or perhaps even more than the students, because they're the ones who are going to have to make it work. And they're the ones who are going to have to go in the classroom with 30 kids and figure out how to use this technology to aid in their instructional practice. Next slide. Now, I'm not sure I'll have any objections to this. These standard art tests are an invention of the devil. What they do is they make us teach to the tests. And that means that teachers are judged by that. School districts are judged by that. Our money comes as a result of that. Guilty of the test. Hopefully someday should have.
No.
Not again.
Not again. Oh man. What are we gonna do? Does he have backup? 2D or something?
I don't know. 2D be awesome.
Yeah,
Poor
anything.
Tom.
Oh man. Well,
Like I
don't know what to
said,
say, guys.
We are a patient crew.
Oh.
We are a patient crew.
That's a viscerally unpleasant feeling. We are a patient crew. Let's just hang out. Okay. let's just hang out for a bit. Somebody asked the question what time the Somnium Space event is tomorrow. It is 12 noon Pacific Standard Time.
Oh,
and
Tom's back.
Hey,
Tom, are
here
you
we
back?
go, Tom.
You hear me?
Yeah, Tom. Yeah, sure.
Everything's okay. I don't know what happened. You know what happened?
All right. Gremlins, Tom.
Okay.
Just
Greg's
keep-
got to be.
Keep going.
Hard to say
Remember
is
Mike
that what
and
we do is if-
what is it on air, please?
okay.
Thanks.
Okay. Can you hear me now, everyone? I'm sorry about that. Yeah. Okay. So one of the things I think we can do with VR is just kids are used to playing games, and they have to learn some things, accomplish some tasks in order to get to the next level, right? That's what we should be doing in terms of learning experience platforming in VR. So you actually measure one of the student progression by what they're in. And oh, by the way, you don't cut them off. They can get to the high. Slope of that is important because there may be things you want to adjust in order to increase the slope of the learning curve or the intuitiveness of the interfaces for students. Next slide. So, worlds that are fun, they're beautiful, they don't. That's
You know, I keep thinking about the struggles that people that live way out in the outskirts of wherever, away from phone, from dedicated lines, from, all these things. And we're trying to service these people and help them as educators and whatnot. And they struggle so hard to stay connected. And we're seeing it here. And I know, there's Tommy's back again. I hope that he's going to persist. But Tom, we're thinking
Tom,
about the
I'm
people
gonna
that
hold
you're
on to you
working
now.
with.
I'm
Now,
gonna
hold on.
You're not going anywhere now. Just stay here.
okay. Okay.
I got you, my friend.
Dedicated lines, no Wi-Fi. That's a trick there.
Okay.
All right.
Okay. No,
Oh,
I should
goodness.
do this next time. Okay. Next slide. Number 8. All of us have had this when we have headset.
Yeah, no, you keep cutting out completely. I'm not sure why. Yeah, Daniel's trying to hold on to you, but he's going to reset the headset. All right.
We keep going. We got time.
Yes, but
We're good.
Daniel, turn around and
Yes.
look at that slide.
Ooh, relish the sacred moments. This is a sacred moment. This is
You
a
got
sacred
it.
moment.
It
Isn't
is. Yeah.
I mean, we've come this far, and sure, there's glitches, but nobody's leaving. I don't think one of us has left the room. We're all putting up with where we're at, and think how far we've come. He's been in this game for 56 years. He's not in a hurry, and this isn't the end. This. We've started something real here. I overheard him say after. I think it was after. Was it after the panel, or was it after his keynote on Monday? There he is. All right, keep trying, Tom.
Sorry.
Remember, microphone and on air, and keep going.
Can you hear me? Everybody hear me? Hopefully,
Yes.
maybe in a few hours we'll go through these slides. But there's a sacred moment when you introduce a person into a virtual world. And here's Brian. He's one of the students at Robert Eagle Staff Middle School. This is after he just took the headset off. And all of the kids felt the same way. This was a sacred moment of seeing what they would say. And they said, this changes everything. That's what they say. the kids say, sixth graders. And so we need to relish those and treat them every time that we put a headset on a person, especially the first time. We have to feel that we're doing something for them that they'll never forget. Okay, next slide. We have to remember that virtual reality is a tool. It's a tool to help us accomplish things, just like a hammer, a screwdriver, a wheel, a steam engine. But the real world cannot be surpassed. We need to use VR to help our children appreciate how wonderful the real world is. Now, a lot of kids can get so intoxicated by this, and adults, that they never want to leave the virtual world because they can control everything. But the real world already has the best kind of visual displays, the best kind of olfactory displays, the best kind of tactile displays. And we need to understand that and limit the time that is necessary for kids to spend in VR and have them go outside. Now, there are things that we can do in VR we can't do outside. For example, we can help this little girl see what's going on in what's inside of the tree. And this little girl could become a squirrel or a bird or an earthworm and understand how all those different roles and models can help them understand what it's like when they go into a real forest. So having been a virtual bird or a virtual tree and growing up in the forest and lifting out your branches, you appreciate the real tree and the real forest. So again, we have this wonderful educational tool to help us do that. Number 10. So I think I related this story before, but a few years ago I was asked to give a talk in Eastern Washington to the Washington Tree Fruit Growers Association. These are the people that grew apples and Washington apples and other things. And I asked the dean, I said, what? You want me to go talk to a bunch of tree fruit growers? And he said, yeah, go talk to them. They want to hear about what the university is doing, what the College of Engineering is doing. And I said, okay, what should I talk about? Just talk about virtual reality. So I did. I went and there were about 3,000 tree fruit growers in this audience. And I talked to them about virtual cockpits and about virtual reality and the things that can happen. And after I gave my talk, all these parents came up to me and they were surrounding me and said, wow, this is going to be the future. What should we get our kids to study? Should they study computer science or should they study engineering or whatever? And, I thought for a minute, I said, the best thing you can do for these kids is get them to read the classics, because there's so many wonderful virtual worlds in our imagination that we get from reading. And this should not take the place of reading, because imagination is king. And we don't necessarily want to take away from that. We read Lord of the Rings, and then we watch the movie. Well, the movie destroyed the world I built when I read Lord of the Rings. And I find that a lot, that I create this marvelous world that I like to visit, but it goes away. So we can't do too much for them. We want them to use their imagination. Next slide. It's so important for us to appreciate diversity. Having different perspectives, different ethnicities, having different shapes and sizes, all of these things. One of the reasons that my lab was so successful all those years, the last 30 years at the University of Washington, is because of this enormous diversity we had. Not only in where the kids came from, the students, but also their disciplines. And we got all those inventions because of that difference in diversity. It helps us to see the whole. It's back to the blind man around the elephant. I think Alvin Braylon showed a slide about that. that with the diversity, we can put all of these pieces together and we can understand the whole. Next slide. We're at a time now when it's difficult to know what direction we should take. It's difficult to know the future. Things are happening so fast. Can't keep track. And the navigation systems we used to use in the past are really obsolete. For example, the sextant. Sextant was a navigation tool, a compass, a navigation tool. But it's difficult to use the sextant when you can't see the stars, or when you're in such a high sea state that you can't see the horizon. So we need to have a new sextant. That's what I call the nextant, the next sextant. And the next sextant is our hearts. Pretty much our hearts know before our heads know. Our hearts know today what our heads will know tomorrow. And we have to learn to navigate with our hearts and trust our hearts, regardless of what it takes for us to get there. Next slide. I don't know if any of you have heard of the guy by the name of Randy Pausch. That's it, Randy Pausch. He's an amazing guy. Randy Pausch died in 2007. He's a professor at Carnegie Mellon University in computer science. He and I were great friends. And he was one of the most delightful people I know in terms of his enthusiasm. And he was like a big kid. Well, when Randy was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, he knew that he had a limited time to live. And it had metastasized. And what he did at Carnegie Mellon is gave the last lecture he would give in his life upon the earth. And in that last lecture, he basically talked about how do you achieve your childhood dreams. Didn't have anything to do with computer science. Talked about his childhood dreams. He talked about the first day that we met each other. And the wonderful spirit that he had, that he left with us, is your homework. I want you to go home and watch the last lecture. And you can find it on YouTube. There's also a book about the last lecture. It's wonderful. You also should have your kids, your students, your own children watch this. Okay, the last manifesto is we need to join kindred spirits, birds of a feather. We're sort of doing that now, aren't we? We're sort of in this together. Even though we have different perspectives, we still have the same desire to lift the world, especially through the young people. And that's where the Virtual World Society comes in, and this organization comes in, what L'Oreal and Daniel have put together and others, of these gatherings, these kindred spirits. How do we make it live and continue and grow? And that's one of the things I've been trying to do for a while. As a matter of fact, I first started the first Virtual World Society in 1996 when the movie Lawnmower Man came out. And I was really afraid of what that would do to people, what they would think about virtual reality after that movie. And I started it, and we had 100 kids that were involved in this society, but it was way too soon because the technology wasn't around to do anything. Next slide. So let me talk a little bit about the Virtual World Society as a place where we can keep these kinds of things going. Our mission is really to unlock. It's back to this unlocking. To unlock our minds and link our hearts. To work on these pervasive problems that exist in the world. And remember to treasure the children and the teachers. Because we want to lift humanity and sort of be the heart of what this technology is about. And it's not just about virtual reality. It's about the technology of our age, including artificial intelligence, things like that. Next slide. So the symbol, if you notice the the symbol that we're using for the Virtual World Society, the logo, is this adult that's holding up a child. As a matter of fact, they're even sort of throwing the child up in the air. This is really meaningful in terms of lifting mankind. Let me explain why. Next slide. If you look closely at this slide, there is an adult and there's a child. The adult is lifting up the child. And the adult is facing in one direction and the child is facing in another direction. The adult has this experience, is looking to the past, has wisdom. The child has vision. And you're holding up the child so the child can see beyond what the adult can see, up high. And that's what we need to give our children. We give them roots and wings so that they can go out there and harness this future. Next slide. So this is the connection we want to make across the ages of grandparents to grandchildren. Matter of fact, now that I'm a grandparent and I have grandchildren, we both have a common enemy, right? Our kids who had their kids. Next slide. As I look back on my life, I look at where I started, and this first picture is my high school science fair project, and where I built a rocket telemetry system. I was really into rockets. And you know why I did that? It's not necessarily anything that happened in school, it's what happened in my home. It's because my parents had this weird kid, this sort of nerdy kid that loved electronics. And I would build stuff, and my mother would go off to the shop to buy parts. She didn't know what those parts were, but she did it. And they supported us, and they encouraged me to basically build my own passions. And that happened. And now that middle picture shows what happened. That kid in high school became an Air Force officer and invented virtual reality. And then from that, building upon that, to actually work on ways to make it better, make it best, like the virtual retinal display, and now like the Virtual World Society. Next slide. Now looking at this, it all started in the home. And that's where education should start, is in the home. Now I realize all families are not like other families, and but really that's where this should begin. And I mentioned before we had a difficult time getting VR into schools. Well, I think it's going to be a lot less difficult to get it into homes, because look at all the technology we already have in homes. We already have all these smartphones. We have laptop computers. We have smart screen TVs, desktop computers, all of this stuff. And we're going to have more and more, especially as the price comes down in this. There's no question that there's going to be more technology in homes than we're ever going to see in the schools. How can we use that? How can we use VR to be this amazing teaching medium, which is lifelong learning? It's not just the kids that are learning, it's the parents that are learning with the kids. And the grandparents are included in that too. So now we have this common medium where we can go on expeditions together and learn how to do things. And this is also going to be crucial as maybe I'll look at the next slide, when we see everything changing in our lives. We have, if you believe the New York Times, I mentioned this before, if you believe the New York Times, 50% of the jobs that we have today are not going to be around there. Careers are not going to be here in 20 years. What happens to all those people who've been to university, have trained up, been to the vocational schools, had a job, whatever, and now they disappear? What are they going to do? Well, they're not going to go back to school, chances are. But the power of VR for training and for education, it's already happening with Coursera and Khan Academy, all these things. we are going to have to use this technology, this medium, as a lifelong learning and educational medium, training medium for the future, because things are going to happen so fast. Next slide. So we got to get ready for that. And we as educators have to think about more than what's going on in schools. We have to think about homes, because I believe that's where the short-term action is going to happen, rather than in schools. Now, this will be an adjunct to the schools, and eventually the schools will catch on, because the pressure will be so high from the parents, having had this experience, that they'll want that to happen. The PTA will insist. The taxpayers will insist. Let me just tell you another little story I'm sorry about this for taking so much time. But I was invited, I gave a talk to the school supervisors all the school district supervisors in Washington State. We had a meeting and they asked me to give a talk, and I talked about virtual reality and things like that. There was this one school superintendent who said, "Would you mind coming to our school district and tell them about virtual reality? I'd love to have all my teachers together and you tell them about it and the future of it and how it can be used for teaching and things like that." And I said, "Well, sure. Where are you?" And he says, "Well, I live in Waterville." Well, Waterville is this really small town in the middle of Washington State where it's just covered with wheat crops. And so he said, "What we'll do is we'll have Tom Furness Day in Waterville." I said, "Oh, okay." I didn't know what he meant. And so my wife and I drive to Waterville. And sure enough, there's a sign when you go into the town, Tom Furness Day in Waterville. And I show up to school, and oh, by the way, the school district is one school. All of the kids are in this one school. And so they had me in the gym to talk all reasons. Went to, they wanted to speak to all the students' classes separately. And so I did that and talked to the students. Then they had the teachers stay.
Oh. Oh my goodness. There he is. All right, Tom.
Make sure. Can you hear me?
Now
Okay.
we can. Yes, we can.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay, good. Well, so I was talking about the teacher. Then I spent some time with the teachers. And then they had the parents come in the evening. The parents all came in, and these were wheat farmers and other things. Actually, let me back up a little bit. In one of the schoolrooms, I asked the kids, "Well, what do you want? What kind of profession do you want to go into when you grow up?" And some of the kids said, "Well, I want to be a doctor. I want to be a lawyer. I want to be an engineer or scientist, or I want to be a mother or a homemaker or whatever." And one kid raised his hand and says, "I'm going to be a wheat farmer." He says, "My father and my grandfather were all wheat farmers, so I'll probably be a wheat farmer." I said, "Good on you," because we definitely need wheat farmers, and be the best wheat farmer you can be. And so anyhow, in that evening, the parents came. And the parents, again, same thing. We want the best for our children. What will it take? And I said, "Well, you know, what we ought to do is be building some virtual classrooms here in Waterville, where you can start learning about the technology." And lo and behold, they put this on the ballot for a tax levy. And they raised the money with a tax levy in order to bring in equipment and bring in the expertise to have VR in Waterville, Washington. So parents have great power. The PTA has great power. And of course, all of this has to work together. Next slide. So what I want to do is figure out a way that we can determine the best way and understand how VR is going to work in the home. as a classroom, what I call a learning living room, because of all this technology available and what we need to have in there in terms of content for that technology. Next slide. So we did sort of a pilot project of a learning living room. This is one family we picked on the East Coast, and this family basically the equipment, system, but they felt this but to start building worlds. Eventually, hope this job. As this kid really got into it. And he started inviting his neighbors in, neighborhood kids, to participate in VR. So it became sort of a gathering place for the local community. And then he and his family came out to the AWE, Augmented World Expo, a few years ago and talked about, the mother and father talked about what had happened. Now, this was just one experience. What is going to happen is emergence. We don't have a clue. Nobody has a clue how VR is going to work in the home, ultimately. So we want to find out. And the way we want to find out is this new project we call the Learning Living Room. Next slide. So what is in the Learning Living Room? Okay, what if we could get 1,000 families around the world infused with VR technology in their homes and content, and have them look at the pervasive problems that they have around them, the local problems, as well as the problems they see in schools, and things like that, and start working on it, including world-building tools where they could build content. And that all these homes are connected to each other around the world. And they start sharing experiences and sharing their libraries that they've built. And then we document this. We build a feature-length, full-length documentary of these 1,000 families over a period of time and see what, and basically see what happens and learn from this. This will inform our community. It will inform the world. It will build a case for getting this into the homes and getting it into the schools. So this is a new project we're starting in the Virtual World Society. I've been talking about it for a while, but hopefully now it's going to actually happen. We're going to, of course, hopefully have a lot of help from the hardware manufacturers and the software people and the platform people like this, because this is probably how they're going to be meeting together and enjoying and comparing notes and things like that. Next slide. So there are other projects that are all underway in the Virtual World Society. We're trying to build a learning center, an innovation center. This Take Flight is where we are taking what we've learned in middle schools and trying to export it to other middle schools. We have these Nextant challenges and Nextant prizes that will go along with the Learning Living Room, where we'll have basically people watching this and documenting it and writing papers about it and getting the word out. We do have a project with the Make-A-Wish Foundation. We have a partnership with them where we are actually making wishes for the kids that are terminally ill or are in pretty bad shape medically. And now we want to go beyond that to share it. We make a wish for people by one form or another.
Oh my! Hopefully he will be back in just a second. You know, you got to give him credit. This takes a lot of work to keep coming back and seeing this through. And I just want to remind you all, you probably already saw it in the beginning of his presentation, but the headsets that you're wearing and the devices and things you're using, they wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the work of Tom Furness. Just want to remind you, it was pretty amazing. Pretty amazing. And so even though it's come so far, we still have these technical issues. He's so close to almost done.
Oh, how many more slides?
Just a few more, just a few more.
Okay.
But
Well,
I love
we'll
it that he's persisting. He's persisting.
Indeed. If anybody persisted, he has so far.
He has.
He has a career of persistence, doesn't he?
Yay.
All right, guys. How's everybody doing? We got is it less than 24 hours now till the end?
Very much less, yep.
What an epic event it has been. You guys have been
16 hours,
amazing.
yeah,
I mean,
left.
we keep saying thank you to all the organizers and events and teams and tracks and volunteers and absolute partners and sponsors and everybody. But I want to give a big shout out to you guys because you are legends. You've been here from day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, day 5. We've had epic moments together. And I don't know if you feel like I do, but I feel like we have found tribe this week. That's what it feels like.
We got tribe, yeah.
We have tribe, exactly. Kindred spirits. And there's been, it's been an epic event, but it's the little moments, the little things. Oh, I got to tell you a story. This morning, we were setting up an event in Engage for Gabriel Rene, whose event is actually starting in about, we rescheduled it, so it's starting in about half an hour in Engage on the moon base. So this was this morning. And Gabriel Rene, he dropped out for some reason. We couldn't quite figure it out. So I was on the phone to him and he said, I'm going to try and get back in. I think, Kent, you were there, right? And so I'm calling him on, all right, he's back. I'll save my story for another time.
Save the story,
yeah. Yeah, save the story. Megaphone and on air, Tom, you good?
Megaphone.
We were just saying thank you for your persistence and determination on multiple levels. Multiple levels. I know.
But thank you guys for staying. I mean, it's
of course. We're not going anywhere, Tom.
Okay, so let's go beyond this. Let's go to the next slide. So we're trying to do a lot of the virtual. It is a nonprofit. Rumi, by the way, I just received a message from Rumi. Are you guys here? For the Virtual World Society and for this Learning Living Room. Yep, fantastic. Wonderful. Okay. So next slide. Let's go to the next slide. I'll wrap this up. So how do you, let me say, encourage you to join the Virtual World Society. It's free. It's an opportunity for you to get a newsletter, to stay on top of what we're doing. We want to involve you in our work. Especially, we have this new platform we call We Make Reality. There's a Discord channel for that that you can log into and be a part of that. And this is a community of people that actually make content. These are the people that are the artists and the designers that we want to have involved in creating this content that's going to go into those families. And so join. And it's easy, just go to Virtual World Society, oneword.org, and you'll find out how to do that. And you can then branch off to the other things that you're interested in doing. Next slide. Okay, so we have about 1,200 members now, but by the end of the year, we want to have 5,000 members. And that will happen because of you guys, I bet, because it's a leveraging effect. And once you have this number of members, then you have a big stick to help with the industry, contact with the industry, because they realize, wait, these guys are really for real, and that they have a good collection of wonderful people that are involved. Now, my dream is 10 years from now, 11 years from now, we'll have 10 million families who are subscribers of the Virtual World Society. 10 million families, just like can you guys still hear me?
Yep, keep going. You're going to make it. I know it. I believe.
We're going to make it. Okay, I'm not sure what's happening. My image is jittering quite a bit. So I'm going to get there, even with the jittering. So with 10 million families that pay $100 a year to be subscribers to the Virtual World Society, and for which they receive content for their homes, for education, for entertainment, for all those kind of things, good housekeeping, seal of approval kind of stuff. If you now take $100 and multiply it by 10 million, what do you get? So you'd have $1 billion a year to work with for those people who are making content to survive, because this is what they want to do. They show up at the hackathon. In Seattle, last hackathon, we had 350 people show up at the hackathon. They work Boeing, Microsoft, at Google, at Amazon, and they hate their jobs. They want to build VR, and they want to build VR for good. And so that's the passion that's out there we're seeing here in this room today, is that people just want to do good and take these juices that are flowing inside of them to do it. So in 2031, let's have 10 million families that are subscribers. By the way, in 2031, I will be 87 years old. So before I croak, it would be great to see that happen. Next slide.
The gremlins. Anyway, let me get back to my story. I'll take the 2 minutes to tell you this story because I'm going to forget. I'm going to remember this for the rest of my life. So earlier this morning, we were in Engage. We were waiting for Gabriel Rene to join us for his presentation on the spatial web, which has been rescheduled for in about 25 minutes back in Engage. Anyway, Chris Madsen, trying to kind of break the interlude much like I am doing here, says, "Oh, Daniel, I've got a whale. I'm going to spawn a whale outside on the moon base." And that was funny. So I said, "Oh, it would be cool if I could ride it." And he says, "Oh, I've got a rideable one." So he spawns a rideable wave outside the moon base. I run out through the airlock onto the moon. I'm looking up at the planet. I hit sit on the whale. Suddenly I'm sitting on this whale. And of course, Chris is maneuvering this whale around the moon base. I look back and Kent Bai is sat right behind me. At that very moment, my phone rings and Gabriel Rene is talking me about he's probably not going to make it. So I'm on the phone, riding a whale on the moon, outside the moon base, looking at Kent Bai. I will never forget that moment. I will never forget that moment. That was absolutely epic. Just one
That's
of those
incredible.
many moments. Yeah, one of the many moments we've had, the little moments along that's what I was saying. It's the little moments that make the big event.
All right, Tom, you're back. The determination is unbelievable.
Good grief, people are still here?
Yes, we are.
I can't believe it. Oh, wow. Well, thank you for staying. I'm sorry about all
Absolutely.
that. Yeah.
And thank you so much to all the people who've been helping out, and Angelina and Caitlin just lost her battery, so we're just struggling through. All right, so are you ready for the last bit? Let's see if we can get through some questions.
Yes, well, it turns out my battery's going to run out here too shortly, it looks like. So I may not be on for long. So let me just finish up. One of the reasons that I was so excited about this event is that this is really what we want to support. I mean, I want the this gathering, this team, what Daniel and educators in VR, Daniel and L'Oreal are doing to be a big part of the Virtual World Society. It's helping to fulfill our mission, along with others who certainly will want to be supporting it. But let me finish up these last few slides, and then we'll see how long we have until my battery runs out. Can we go to the next slide? Mm-hmm. Okay. So I don't know if you guys remember Captain Kirk from Star Trek fame.
That sums up our evening.
That's right. Well, it does. It does. You know, Captain Kirk, I don't remember remember the movie or the scene when he was dying, actually. He finally died. And he was sort of staring off glassy-eyed into space, and he said, "It was fun." And that's what, I'm not going to croak now. I don't hope I'll be croaking, but it has been fun, this whole journey. And hopefully I'll make it to 87 I was talking about before, and see those 10 million families. So we'll see if that happens. Next slide. So what about the future? I'm not dead yet, so I want to keep kicking for as long as I can. This is what I want to do. Next slide. I want to build a super cockpit for the mind. And this super cockpit for the mind is going to be like an interface that you've never seen before. It's going to take into account all the things we've learned over the years. Especially what we're going to do is the whole person. I've been doing research sponsored by NSF to look at the whole retina. It turns out the field of view we have in our headsets today are only 1/2 of the visual field that we have. And we've been exploring the functionality of the far peripheral retina and finding out incredible things that go on there. Nobody's really researched this before systematically. And it is a way to get to our limbic system. It's a way to get to our subconscious. It is amazing what we're learning, where you have perception without awareness. You can say things are there, identify things that are there that you can't see. But you are seeing. A part of you is seeing. So we're getting into the subconscious, which is pretty exciting. Also, other modalities. One of the things we're working on now is how can we communicate with other sentient beings? For example, one of the most alien beings we have on the earth is octopuses, cephalopods. We're now working on a way that we can inhabit a virtual octopus and hopefully at some point carry on a meaningful interaction. I think have you seen the movie Arrival? Any of you have seen the movie Arrival? It's sort of that kind of thing we want to try to do. So other modalities are out there and how we can map our psychomotor capabilities, our sensory capabilities into other ways of sensing what's going on in the world, like the arms of an octopus. We want to be able to retrain our senses. As it turns out, the receptors are there, we just aren't using them. We aren't using our peripheral vision. The coach of the Washington Huskies, the football coach, a few years ago came to me and said, "Tom, my quarterbacks can't see. They don't use their peripheral vision. How can you train them to see?" Well, we worked on a project to do that. We can train people to use their vision, their hearing, their tactile, what's in their brains, just like I would talk about the epiphany of drawing. We can unlock capability we have, including a cockpit that connects us to our bodies. So we know what's really happening when we feel hunger pains. And we know what's happening to us when we eat something that's good for us or not good for us. We can have that in our super cockpit for the mind. We can have a pilot intent inference engine. This is where AI comes into the picture, where the intent is inferred based upon what we're trying to do. And we have like R2D2 by our side who goes off and does some things for us and then organizes the world for us to interact with, high bandwidth. This is the way we want to interface with AI. And this is the way AI becomes IA, intelligence amplification. I want to build a flow state generator. Part of the virtual supercockpit of the mind is the flow state generator. It puts us in this altered state of hyper learning, where there's evidence that we can learn to 7 times faster and retain that by being in this magic space that is a balance between challenge and skill and taking us up this curve that lets us achieve these higher levels. And then mind bubbles. Since VR is good for activating spatial memory, we want to develop a way to use the method of loci, sort of the mind palace idea, where on the fly, as we understand things and learn things, we can put them in these places that we'll always remember. And we can invite our friends into these places of our understanding of a particular topic. And they can share their spaces with us. So this is what I call mind bubble. So the supercock for the mind is high on my agenda right now that I want to bring to the community and have it the ability to connect through our super cockpits of the mind. I built a super cockpit for fighter airplanes. Let's do one for the mind. Next slide. Okay, well, this is just a little quote that resonated with me. Again, I'm not dead yet, but life is no brief candle to me and to all of you. I'm sure you feel the same way. It's sort of a splendid torch, which I have got a hold of for the moment, and I want to make it burn as brightly as possible before handing it on to future generations. I think that's what all of us want to do. So we want to burn brightly. We want to take that fire that we're playing with and hand it off in a good way to these future generations. Next slide. So in closing, I want to mention something about virtual frogs. Again, I hadn't been to Seattle long before I got a phone call from some 4th graders in a school in North Seattle. They said, would you come up and talk to us about virtual reality? We have something we want to talk to you about virtual reality. And I said, oh, okay, that'll be sort of fun. So I went up to this elementary school, and in their cafeteria, it was lunchtime, had about 9 kids gathered around the table, boys and girls, 4th graders, and they said, well, we're happy that you came to talk to us. We want to talk to you about virtual frogs. And I thought for a minute, virtual frog, okay. Well, yeah, sure, let's talk about virtual frogs. And they said, you see, we're really concerned. We 4th graders are concerned that all those high school students are dissecting frogs. And they've got to kill the frogs to find out what's inside of them. And if they're virtual frogs, you wouldn't have to kill all of those real frogs. And not only that, you could do way more. You could shrink yourself to 1 inch high and get a frog's view of the world. Or you could shrink yourself to 1 millimeter high, crawl up the frog, go through the mouth, slide down the esophagus, and come out the other end. And I was thinking about this time, gosh, these are better ideas than my graduate student. And I said, well, yeah, you could do that. You could save all those frogs, building with virtual frogs, but you know, somebody's going to have to build the virtual frogs. Who's going to do that? Well, this 4th grader across the table looked at me indignantly and pointed to himself and said, well, we are. We're the only ones that have an imagination. Think about that. That's the imagination we want to tap. That's what we want to build upon and keep it alive and make it strong. So if you remember anything about my lecture or a talk today, remember virtual frogs. Join the Virtual World Society. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Laurel and Daniel for this wonderful experience that we've all had. And bless everyone in your journey. Thank you. So I have still a little power left. If anybody wants to
Wow.
ask any questions. It won't be long, but good grief, is it 8 o'clock?
Yes.
We've been at this for 2 hours.
Yes.
Oh,
And you know, honestly, Tom, I think the audience deserves some emojis as well.
Absolutely.
Yay!
Emojis coming up. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, here we go. I love you guys.
Oh, these are the future, Tom. These are
They
the
are.
people of the now and of the future.
And we want to do it together.
And we're doing it together. And honestly, I have a million questions. I'm not sure how much battery you do, but if you go out this time, it's good. It's good. You know,
I'll be
the
dead,
love
I
is
think.
alive.
Or dead
I
in the
know.
battery.
Oh, dead on the battery, dead on the battery, you know.
Yeah, that's one of the limitations of the Quest, I'm afraid.
I know. It's a limitation of everything, and I know there's some people who are probably overheating here. But I want you to just let me start out with you the first to before I open up the floor. Here's a moment where you have had all these experiences, you have developed all these amazing things, and the stuff we're wearing on our faces would not be here without you. Now you're standing here as a cartoon character, looking out at all these cartoon characters. Describe this moment for you in your head and your heart.
This is an epiphany. This is one of those epiphanies I've had in my life. I mean, I've been talking to my wife about it. I said, I'm blown away. This is one of the most amazing experiences that I could have and could even comprehend. And I love it. And I love what's been the other talks that I've attended, what everyone seems to be, and you feel the enthusiasm, you feel the energy, feel the spirit of what's going on here. And it's not just, a great use of technology. It's what's happening as a result of it. It's a medium for communication, a medium for exchange of hearts and minds. And, I feel it. I feel the energy in it. And that's going to at least give me a few more years to keep going, right?
That's going to charge your battery.
That's right. So, yes, it's an epiphany.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah.
Oh, I love it. That just touches my heart. Caitlin Krause, you're first up. You're on.
Oh my gosh. Well, just thank you, first off, to Tom for being so inspiring. And just so you know, I also got yanked out and I couldn't wait to get back in here. And I think, for everybody else, if you saw me disappear on stage, it was like the screen going black, and it's that kind of feeling where you feel like, oh, not only do you feel isolated when you're away, but I also realized, no, I'm not alone. I'm coming right back in here and, doing it again. And I think that, for me, I've gave sessions at this conference all about social emotional connection. It's about being real and being human. And I'm taking away that image of the adult kind of lofting and lifting the child. And I think at times we're all both. Like, we get to be that adult, and sometimes we get to be the child, lifted by other mentors and learning and community. So just, thank you, Tom, for giving so much and for making this a space that I couldn't wait to get back into tonight. This whole community, it's like, it's connecting the dots around the world. And
thank you, Caitlin.
Caitlin, thank you so much for that. And one of the things that's clear is, even though we do look for that cartoon set,
Uh-oh.
Oh no. Oh goodness. Okay, well,
all right.
That's what I wanted. I'm gonna just thank you, and I was gonna ask Tom what he was looking forward to, but maybe that would be my question. What we're looking forward to, and it could be just to continue this. Yeah.
And he covered a lot of that when in his talk. But all right. So I think we're going to see if he comes back. But I think we have abused his poor reset button enough for tonight.
I get what it feels like, though. My goodness.
Yeah. And one of the things that I know, thank you, that he would say right now is that when he started developing all of this, it was to solve a problem. And I keep thinking about that. When we create things, we're trying to solve a problem. We're trying to find the answer. We're trying to solve a problem. But what has happened is that this technology, at least for us here in Altspace, in Rumi, in Mozilla Hubs, and in Engage, and Somnium Space, all the different places here where we gather, even in Second Life and all the other things that we've had access to, we come together to solve a different kind of problem. And that is inclusiveness and acceptance and a belief that all things are possible. And I don't think that when he was trying to do the flight deck and all the gearing and stuff, he was thinking that that's a problem. Our society is a problem. And right now we live in a society for many of people around the world that isn't very kind. It isn't very caring, and it isn't very sharing. But you know what? We're proving that it really is. And we prove that by making a difference, by coming together, by sharing what we know, by appreciating and respecting what, our own experiences and our own expertise. And he so beautifully said it takes a very diverse culture to come together, to think not just outside the box, but just to blow up the box, to just break all the walls of the box. And that's what we're doing here. This is what the summit is all about. We want to bring people together so they can start firing up that imagination. We can start building those virtual frogs. We can start thinking about the possible and quit saying we can't, because I know we can. So if he was here, I know he would say that probably better than I did. Anyway, thank you all for enduring and for hanging in there through all of this. I'm going to unmute, let you all chat, and get on with the whatevers you want to be doing. We have events that are still going on through tomorrow. We have, let's see, the effectiveness in VR training is starting in just a couple hours with Thomas More. The University College of Applied Sciences is going to be talking about the effectiveness, or Carl Bohl, is going to be talking about virtual reality at the Thomas More University College. So I'm trying to read this through a very tired eyes. And he's going to be talking about using 3D VR and 360-degree VR for presentations. I'm going to say this right, motor assembly training, and the effectiveness as a training tool. We have, all night long. I'm excited about this one. I hope to see you there. We have Seversity. We have, oh, you're back. You surprised me again. You made it back. Oh my God, I love it. Okay, all right. So I'm going to shut up. You keep talking, my friend. Let's see. More questions? Are you ready for more questions, Tom?
Sure.
All right.
I just found a way to get a new life.
A little VR CPR.
That's right. Oh God, you guys are probably tired of me now, so we can.
I know,
we
we're not tired of you at all. My bladder may explode.
Yeah.
Could we have a group selfie?
Oh, wouldn't that be fun?
Oh, absolutely. All very easily. So I want everybody to come up on the stage and get behind Tom and I will get out my big long camera.
Okay. Let me.
And we're going to get a group selfie here, and let me get this camera set up so everybody in behind me. I have to fiddle. We're going to take several because there's a lot of people here. Oh my God, this is just beautiful.
And this
is beautiful. All right, give me some hearts. Give me some hearts. Shoot those hearts
yes,
up.
let's get some hearts here.
Hearts. Come on, some love. Get the love alive. Yay. Look at all those hearts. Yay. All right, hang on. Okay, let me get some more. I want to make sure because I always blink. Even in VR, we blink, and it's just so frustrating. All right, hearts. Get those hearts going. Hearts. All right, one more for posterity and blinking. All right. Oh, this is beautiful. All right, hearts. Get those smileys up there. Go. All right, beautiful. Great idea, Steph.